straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily.
I want to give my condolences to the Floyd family.
1 year after he's convicted in the murder of George Floyd, Derek Chauvin appeals his conviction. But first, it's Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard.
Based on my review of prior drafts of the op-ed, I knew that there were that she was referring to Johnny Depp and her marriage.
We take a closer look at Heard's Washington Post article. Plus, has Heard met her donation pledge to the ACLU?
So it's fair to say that she has not donated $3.5 million as of today to the ACLU, true?
That's right.
And later, Depp's business manager breaks down the divorce settlement.
She was demanding $14,250,000 of consideration, and then it got worse.
Law and Crime Daily, covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law and Crime Daily. I'm your host, Brian Buckmeyer. Amber Heard's Washington Post op-ed takes center stage in the defamation lawsuit brought on by ex-husband Johnny Depp. Law and Crime's Anjanette Levy is at the Fairfax County Courthouse, where jurors heard firsthand accounts of the event leading up to the article's debut.
Amber Heard's December 2018 Washington Post op-ed was written in part by lawyers from the ACLU. Heard had become an ACLU ambassador after agreeing to donate half of her divorce settlement from Johnny Depp to the organization.
Based on my review of prior drafts of the op-ed, I knew that there were that she was referring to Johnny Depp and her marriage.
ACLU General Counsel Terrence Doherty was deposed last December. This is the online version of the op-ed in which Heard described being a survivor of sexual violence and domestic abuse. She wrote that 2 years prior, in 2016, she had become a public figure representing domestic abuse. There were emails between Heard's camp and the ACLU about how much Johnny Depp should be mentioned.
And isn't it true that Ms. Heard's advisors initially revised the draft to remove any reference to Ms. Heard's marriage or divorce?
I recall a number of email communications back and forth among ACLU personnel and Ms. Heard's attorneys where they were suggesting edits to the op-ed relating to matters covered in the NDA.
And then isn't it also true that there were some at the ACLU who expressed their belief that excising those references to her marriage and divorce from Johnny Depp made the op-ed less impactful, correct?
It is correct. That is correct.
The op-ed was pitched to a number of publications.
And she writes, "Hey, Michael, wondering if we might interest you in a piece by Amber Heard, who, as you may recall, was beaten up during her brief marriage to Johnny Depp, on what the incoming Congress can do to help protect women in similar situations." Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you read it correctly.
As you know by now, the op-ed was published in December 2018. The timing, according to Doherty's testimony, was important to Amber Heard.
Ms. Heard said in words or substance that she wanted the op-ed to come out soon after Aquaman, correct?
I believe that's correct.
Amber Heard's team maintains that she told the truth in that op-ed, so no defamation occurred. Coming up later, we're going to tell you about just how much Amber Heard has donated to the ACLU and how Elon Musk is involved. Reporting from Fairfax County, Virginia, I'm Anjanette Levy for Law and Crime Daily.
Thanks, Anjanette. Joining us today is defense attorney Jack Rice and co-host Terry Austin. Jack, the way this op-ed was pitched, it is as clear as day that Depp is the one being accused of abuse, but so far the evidence suggests that Heard wasn't physically abused. Now, if she shows up on the stand and says this was emotional abuse, does that win her the case?
Well, probably not, because really what this is about at this point is credibility. And credibility cuts across everything that she does and everything that she says. And so when we think about all of the witnesses that have already appeared, the cross-examination as well as direct examination of Johnny Depp himself, some of the other experts, as well as what she brings herself, and we're still waiting for that, I think that issue really, really matters. And so if we think about just how compelling she can be here, the fact that she may pivot and say it wasn't physical, it was something else, then all of a sudden it changes. So I think it's really important that she come back with that credibility piece. At this point, I think she has failed to do that. The Depp team is doing a very, very good job.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with you, Jack. I might slide in on top of credibility, likability as well. That's another issue. I think that's an issue here.
Good point. Good
now,
point.
Terry, the ACLU witness also discussed the draft of the Washington Post op-ed. Did that testimony help Depp's defamation claim?
Absolutely. Terrence Doherty, he's the general counsel and the COO of ACLU, and that testimony definitely supported the defamation claim. It connects the op-ed piece to Johnny Depp specifically, even though the Amber Heard team is saying he wasn't named, it's no question he was named. This witness told the jury that Heard was appointed as an ambassador to ACLU, that the ACLU discussed this article with her, that they talked back and forth as far as the draft was concerned about Johnny Depp, and that Heard's lawyers took out the specific reference. So there's no question that they were referring to Johnny Depp. There's no question that Washington Post knew that. And in fact, other articles in other publications connected Johnny Depp to that piece. So definitely a good witness.
Yeah, we're starting to really see this case connect at so many levels. It's going to be interesting to see how they finish their case, that being Johnny Depp's attorneys. Thank you both. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, our coverage of the Depp-Heard defamation suit continues. We take a closer look at the video deposition about Heard's donations to the ACLU. Was the full $3.5 million paid off? Welcome back. We continue coverage now in the defamation case of Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. On Thursday, testimony zeroed in on Heard's work as an ACLU ambassador and her pledge to donate $3.5 million to the organization. Counsel for the ACU revealed Heard has not donated since 2018 or met that $3.5 million pledge amount.
Because you've already testified that Ms. Heard was not the original source of the funds for the $500,000 Vanguard contribution, correct?
We received that $500,000 from Vanguard. They're a 501c3, not from any other person.
Right, but Vanguard was associated with Mr. Musk, true?
We believe that to be the case, yes.
Okay. So after this December 2018 donation, has Ms. Heard made any donations directly or indirectly to the ACLU?
No, those are the four contributions, the four that we've discussed.
Well, we're almost 3 years since her last contribution. What, if any, efforts has the ACLU made to get Amber Heard to pay?
We reached out to Ms. Heard. We reached out to Ms. Heard starting in 2019 for the next installment of her giving, and we learned that she was having financial difficulties.
Terry, counsel for Depp spent a long time talking about contributions from Heard to the ACLU. How important do you think that is to this case?
Look, I think it's important to say, look, she pledged all of this money to both the ACLU and to the Children's Hospital of LA, but I don't think they should just keep going over that point. No question, she paid $350 direct, Depp paid $100,000, Vanguard and or Musk paid $500, and Fidelity, which may or may not be Heard, paid $350,000 for a total of $1.3. But here's the point. She pledged $3.5. She never signed the pledge agreement. She had financial difficulties. And if you know anything about charitable giving, you pledge. If you don't sign the agreement, it's a give-get. Who cares if somebody else paid it? So the point is, I think she pledged it. She didn't pay it, but I would not make such a big deal about it.
Yeah. And Jack, that kind of bleeds into my question, and we kind of talked about this already earlier. I think it's about credibility and likability, but the question here is, are they kind of beating the dead horse with this issue of credibility and likability, or do you think it's helping Depp's case?
Well, you know, I may disagree. And the reason is I'm thinking about it in two ways. Is that I'm thinking of the narrative that I'm trying to establish here. One of those narratives is about this question of honesty. In other words, does she lie to you? The second one has to do with authenticity. And what I'm talking about was when she makes a promise to give this money, she doesn't give it. But that's not the big issue. The biggest issue has to do with her willingness and desire to sort of become the voice of the Me Too movement. And then she doesn't even bother to come forward with the money that she promises for that Me Too movement, which brings to question the real viability of her actually being that voice or ever caring to be that voice. She is an opportunist. She is a liar. Those are my big arguments that I'm making if I'm representing the Depp team. And her failure to pay and her unwillingness to support this cause supports those very claims.
Jack, with talk like that, I think the Depp team's going to be calling you for some assistance sometime soon. That's an interesting point, and I tend to agree. I like that angle. We'll see if they bring it up on closing arguments in this case. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, our coverage of the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard defamation trial continues. Johnny Depp's business manager takes the stand why he says he was reprimanded by Heard's legal team. Welcome back. We're diving deeper into the breakdown of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's relationship. On Thursday, Depp's business manager testified to the amount Heard asked for as part of a divorce settlement.
She initially was looking for a consideration of $4 million, but her demand continually increased. It went from $4 million to $5 million. Then it went from $5 million to $5.5 million. Then it went to $7 million. And then it was $7 million, and she demanded that Mr. Depp also pay $500,000 to her attorneys. So the next demand was that all of the community liabilities that were unresolved, approximately $13.5 million, that Mr. Depp had to pay those liabilities in its entirety. So at that point, she was demanding $14,250,000 of consideration. And then it got worse. The next demand was that all of this consideration be paid to her free of taxation.
All right, Jack, so far you've been turning water into wine with these answers. Let me throw this one at you. On the stand, White testified that he was reprimanded by Heard's legal team for making settlement payments to the ACLU instead of straight to her. So what do you think Depp's attorneys are trying to get at there?
Yeah, because she wasn't going to give it to the ACLU anyway. Right? I mean, this wasn't ever about that. This is about a gold digger who just wants more and more and more and more. By the way, you didn't mention they were married for 15 months. So let me get this right. 15 months, 14 million post-tax. So in other words, we're talking about 25 million pre-tax based upon what? And you start asking this fundamental question about what is it that she's actually about? This supports that contention. She is an opportunist. And this is another witness that you pile on there to say it's not just one witness, it's a bunch of them, each thread wrapped together, weaved into a rope you want to put right around her and say, see, it's what she is. Come on, you know it's true.
I don't know, Jack, as you're talking, I can hear a very specific Kanye West song playing in my head. I won't say which one it is exactly. But Terry, court is dark on Fridays, and we expect Heard's team to start their case early next week. What are your thoughts on Depp's case so far?
My thought is so far, so good. Look, we have not heard Amber Heard's case, but we have heard Johnny Depp so far. Every single witness is in love with Johnny, from all of his security guards to the people who work around him, to his nurses, to his doctors. He is a good man. He treats people well. They don't see that he is in any way, shape, or form abusing anybody physically. Yes, he will beat up a cabinet or two, but he has not been violent as far as concerns Amber. So I definitely think he's put on a good case. And the defamation piece is good, too. These last witnesses have really established the fact that his reputation has been harmed, and it was directly caused by that Washington Post article.
Yeah. Hey, right now the evidence for Depp looks strong, but I would hesitate to say that the case is all but won because Heard still has to put on her case, and every case looks good until you see the other side. So we'll continue with our coverage here of the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard case going forward. Thank you both. And in Dallas, Texas, both sides rest in the case of accused serial killer Billy Shemirmir, but not before the prosecution shared video surveillance footage and cell phone records connecting the defendant to the crimes he's charged with. Shemirmir is on trial for the murder of 81-year-old Lou Harris, an elderly woman who police say was smothered while being robbed in her own home. Authorities say Harris isn't his only victim. In total, he's charged with the deaths of 18 seniors. All but one are women. Prosecutors believe Shemirmir posed as a maintenance or healthcare worker to gain access to people's homes. They say he stole from them and sold their valuables on the reselling app OfferUp. Prosecutors played Walmart surveillance footage for the jury showing Shemirmir and Harris shopping at this store, checking out, and then leaving around the same time on March 20th, 2018, the same day Harris was killed. Prosecutors say he spotted Harris while shopping, followed her home before smothering her with a pillow and stealing her jewelry box. On Wednesday, jurors saw footage also from Walmart on a different day before another alleged victim, Mary Brooks, was killed. An FBI digital forensic analyst testified cell phone records placed Shemirmir at several locations connected to the crime.
The jury's seen evidence that Billy Shemirmir and Lou Harris were at Walmart at Coit and Arapahoe around 3:30 on March 20th. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Lou Harris was found dead with her groceries still out, and 2 hours later, Billy Shemirmir was in possession of her items, including a jewelry box, her keys, and other items. Would the analysis of your cell phone records in a scenario provided be consistent with a cell phone device leaving 66091 Breeze, traveling down off Arapahoe towards Beltline, up towards Billy Shemirmir's home at 4500 Pear Ridge?
Yes, sir. As I stated earlier, I don't have records covering the time, so I can't say the phone. I don't have records that show using a tower that covers Lou Harris' address, but that movement, yes, sir.
That would be that scenario would be consistent with these cell phone records that you have of Billy Shemirmir?
Yes, sir.
Would what we just walked through on January 30th, March 15th, March 19th, March 20th be a prime example of that, what just happened?
Yes, sir. You know, other evidence that's discovered corroborates, or my cell site corroborates the other evidence.
When we come back, a judge issues an order for no cameras allowed in the George Floyd state case for 3 former officers in Minneapolis. Plus, Derek Chauvin appeals his murder conviction in the death of George Floyd. That's next on Law and Crime Daily. Turning to news out of Minneapolis, as the state trial of 3 former Minneapolis police officers charged in the killing of George Floyd will not be live streamed. The judge overseeing the state trial previously allowed the live stream of the Derek Chauvin trial because of the COVID-19 pandemic. He says the pandemic has waned and restrictions have been relaxed, so the pandemic can't be used to justify going against policy on live streaming trials. There will be seats for media in the courtroom and space set aside for Floyd's family and for family members of each defendant. Tao, Lane, and King are charged with aiding and abetting the murder of Floyd in May 2020. Their trial is set to begin June 13th. And more news involving the George Floyd case as Derek Chauvin is appealing his murder conviction. The former Minneapolis police officer is asking the State Court of Appeals to overturn his conviction for the 2020 murder of George Floyd. The 82-page appeal lists more than a dozen reasons his attorneys argue the trial was tainted, including pretrial publicity, protests, and the announcement of the city's settlement with Floyd's family during jury selection. Chauvin's attorneys also accuse prosecutors of misconduct, saying they failed to properly disclose evidence to Chauvin's team. The former officer's appeal asks that the court do one of 3 things: overturn the conviction, order a new trial in a different venue, or reduce Chauvin's sentence to be within the state sentencing guidelines. Prosecutors have not yet responded to the appeal, saying they would save their reply for court. Jack, overturn, new trial, or reduced sentence. Those requests come from very different standards and requests. You're a St. Paul, Minnesota lawyer. Does it look like Chauvin has a real chance, or is this just a Hail Mary?
It's a Hail Mary. I mean, the likelihood of the Court of Appeals actually overturning a jury is almost impossible in this case. Even if they come back and say, oops, that was a mistake, oops, that was a mistake, what they will always say is, but it was never enough. I mean, frankly and truly and honestly, my biggest problem with this entire process was that one juror who actually said he had no position on this and he'd never been to a protest, and then it comes back subsequently that he was actually in Washington, D.C. at a protest wearing a shirt that "Get your knee off my neck." My problem with that is that what we have to have here is a really clean trial, because rule of law is important, and if an entire swath of society feels like they're being treated unfairly, then you got to make sure it's as clean as possible. No excuse, no justification, but you don't want anybody on the other side to be able to point to something and say, oh, because of this bad decision, this was a bad jury conclusion. We want everybody to buy in and say, this conviction should stick because he did it and he got a fair trial. I just don't want any hiccups along the way.
No, it makes sense. Rule of law, I would agree with you on that one. Terry, do you think the judge made the correct decision to exclude the media from this trial?
I don't. I think the right decision would have been to allow cameras in the trial. Look, we had cameras in the original Derek Chauvin case, and that was important. This is one of the biggest cases of the century, the fact that George Floyd was killed in front of all of us. And so I do think the cameras should be there. There's a need for public transparency. So I think wrong decision.
I would agree as well. Well, thank you both, and thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.